Guten Abend! Hello, hello, my dear friends and family. Please let me know if you can hear me well, because I'm not sure. Something is very, very weird with my microphone these days. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old myself, losing my voice and everything. Happy coffee, everyone. It's always a pleasure to see you. Carlito, Katya, Newman, everybody. Hello, hello. Mm, I'm genuinely freezing. I have no idea. Okay, sound is good. All right. My dear friends, today we will talk a bit about Ukrainian lessons that Europeans may learn from Ukraine, from us, because more and more security agencies, intelligence agencies are talking about the upcoming Russian invasion of Europe that might happen. Uh, According to different rumors, either before the end of the decade or within the next decade. And one of the reasons why, oh my God, I'm smacking like Putin in the microphone. You can hear his like intestines when you listen to this Russian huilo. So we have to be prepared for that. And of course, what is the best country to learn from is of course Ukraine, because currently we know that Ukraine kicks ass not only in terms of deep strikes, not only thousands of kilometers away in places like Chuvashia, Buryatia, etc., Bashkortostan, but also medium range, all right, still far behind the front lines, South Ukraine, and also currently, Ukrainian defenders are known for taking more and more territory on a daily basis, which is a very good trend, and I believe that we will see developing because finally, after years, we can see that there are slight movements on the tactical level in Ukraine on the battlefield, and this is good. I think it's a good trend that actually shows us how much you can do when you gather smart people, when you gather all the resources you have and you use them smartly, all right, in a smart way. So what are the news, my friend? We will talk about the news just a bit later, but first of all, I wanted to talk about the tiny presentation that I carry with myself from time to time when I'm asked to go to different cities to talk with local population, local representatives of different services, defense sector, security services, etc., happens from time to time. And I travel on behalf of UA Veterans Germany. It's a Ukrainian organization of Ukrainian veterans with its headquarters in Hamburg. And recently I went to Freising, absolutely amazing city located in Bavaria. I love Bavaria very, very much for the reasons I explained in the Discord server. If you're not on our Discord server, please fix it right now. So the topic of the most recent greetings to Oregon. Greetings, my friend. Hello, Betsy. Doing well. Much love to beautiful Tennessee and all the respect to Darlington, England, and other amazing places, including Australia and Finland, by the way. Finnish people, I love you in a very, very special way, considering that we both share this amazing passion of de-atomizing thousands and thousands of Russians in a very spectacular way. All right, that's why all Ukrainians love Finns so much. So, Norrköping, by the way, I've been to Västerås 2 years ago. I had another presentation there. So, the topic of our speech the last week in Bavaria was about the impact of war on people in Ukraine, on civil population. So I talked just a bit about my own personal experience as well, but also because it was very, very important, I decided to share what the Germans can actually learn from this to be prepared, all right? Because so happened that I was a kind of professional alarmist since 2019, 2020 in Ukraine when I talked about the upcoming Russian invasion and generally about the war to the civilian population. Everybody like threw tomatoes at the screen saying like, why are you shocking people? Don't do that. Everything's fine. We live in a peaceful place and yada yada. But apparently I still have to do something similar nowadays. And switching to our topic, I want to share what I talked about during this conference and also during pretty much both previous conferences in Cafe Berlin, sorry, Cafe Cave in Berlin, and also in Munich on the security conference. So there are several lessons, and Germans specifically and the rest Europeans should learn this from Ukrainian experience, because Ukrainian experience is pretty much written in blood. First of all, what made Ukraine so effective during the first days and what makes Ukraine successful since 2022 is the fact that we pretty much prepared for the Russian invasion. We realized that it might actually happen. We might actually encounter not only artillery shellings and sniper duels and sabotage reconnaissance groups like it was in Donbass since 2014, but we might actually encounter things that are much scarier, like bombs, like ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and things like that. So we started to prepare to this. I believe that our preparation, first of all, started approximately 2020, 2021. That's when we realized that the Ukrainian population should prepare for things that might actually happen. I would not call it inevitable, but things that are very, very likely to happen. And they should know about the location of their bomb shelters and what to have in their backpacks and stuff like that. I talked about that in my videos in Ukrainian language. You probably know about that. But the main idea is that Ukraine, and specifically Ukrainian services, Ukrainian local authorities, and all the apparatus coming from the very top, right, the very top government of Ukraine, and all the way until the very local authorities, they were trained of what to do in case of such emergency, in case of the wartime. Basically, we're talking about the so-called wartime switch. Okay, I will pause this just a second. First of all, Brigade, thank you so much for being with us today, and also please accept my condolences about your friend. It's very, very sad and tragic what happened, and I hope that you're feeling better. Of course, it won't return your friend, but please know that all those beautiful people in the chat support you. Returning to the topic, which by the way was inspired by our precious friend and member of our family. It wasn't me. I hope that we will see her in the chat, maybe just a bit later, but I don't see her at this point. Yeah. Wartime switch. What does it mean? It means that while your country is operating, like all the services are operating in peacetime, right? Peace mode, everything's fine, all right? The industry works as always, businesses work as always. You should also have drills. Scots, then, oh my god, my friend, I am so sorry about this. I don't have super chats on this channel, and this is, oh, it wasn't me. Hello as well. we have this stream because of you. All right, thank you so much for that. So why we don't have super chats on this channel is literally because I believe that it's kind of cheating. You pay to make your commentary visible. And in my personal opinion, it's kind of cheating because I'm trying to reply as much as possible to the commentaries, to all the commentaries, and that is why I don't have super chats on my channel. So I'm very, very sorry. So if I don't see your commentary accidentally, it means that I missed a bunch of other commentaries. Everybody suffers absolutely equally here. Let me please return to the topic, because I will be distracting all the time, but wartime switch. Your country operates in the peacetime mode. Everything's fine. Everything's great. Do drills. And drills are important because when the burning rooster pecks your butt, you know what to do. You're not caught off guard. I talked about this previously, I believe, and on my base, right? Like in my brigade, for example, we did several drills on what to do, for example, during the mobilization. So you have a company of guys, well, let's say a platoon of boys, all right, of our guys, wearing civilian clothes, standing there in front of the gate to the base with like beer, like eating sunflower seeds and stuff like that. Ha ha ha, basically like every normal people does, right? Every normal people does. All the normal people do. And we actually had drills what to do with them. So imagine we have a mobilization, a bunch of civilians are brought to the base. What do we do with them next? So we organized the chain. All right, there were all sorts of our services, our supply services, rear services of my base. You come to the base, okay, you go through this chain of checkpoints, basically like a quest, all right? Here they take your data, here they measure your size, there you have a medical committee. Marta, hello. Hello to beautiful Leipzig. And there you have rest of and like you receive your uniform, you receive your your military property issued by the National Guard, you receive your armored vest and stuff, and then you get divided, right? Like you go to this guy, you go to this guy. So you are being assigned to different subunits of the brigade. We had a drill, and basically during this drill, all the chiefs of the services, they had opportunity to understand what is missing, what is bad, all right, like what works, what doesn't work, which was absolutely crucial and important for them. So that's what happened on our base. Was I saw with my own eyes because I participated, I was there, and I believe I participated in the supervision commission. I don't remember, but it was absolutely crucial to have those drills. Then you have drills in terms of bomb shelters, kids in school having a lesson. All of a sudden, you have test alarm. All right, guys get up, they go after the teacher, like chickens after the hen, and the teacher brings them to the bomb shelter where they go, hooray, we're alive, and they return back to the classroom. All right, so they need to have this experience because on the war, and this is something I'm talking about over and over again, on the war, the biggest thing that scares you is the thing that you don't know, all right? You don't know what to expect. You don't know where the death is coming from, all right, if it comes at all. So just like that, just like in the army where you're trained how to operate your weapons, how to use them, all right, how to move within your unit, within your platoon or your squad, how to react on contact, which is drilled over and over and over again when you're somewhere on the training grounds and your column goes somewhere across the forest, and all of a sudden you have contact, 12 o'clock, 500 meters, a group of goons, all right, and everybody spreads and responds to the threat. So similar things should be drilled in the civilian society among the civilians. I'm not talking about like training them how to be soldiers, how to fight, and yada yada, but basic things. Where is your bomb shelter? In Ukraine, we had a very, very big online map, I think that is still available today, which tells you exactly where your closest shelter is. So wherever you are, at school, in the university, at the job, literally drinking coffee outside, in case you receive a notification about the threat, you can literally open your cell phone, find the closest shelter, and just go there. That's another thing. So drills, that's very, very important to understand. Another thing is a lot of our services in Germany, basically not just a lot of services, all of them, they are prepared to respond to natural disasters, all right? Natural disasters, artificial natural disasters. In Berlin, there was this absolutely crazy blackout. You remember that, when a whole district, thousands of neighborhoods were left without electricity and heating. It was absolutely freaking nasty. Locals remember, right? So the services reacted absolutely well, no questions to them. They organized the so-called invincibility points like we do in Ukraine, and also Ukrainians organized their own invincibility point, which was, again, really cool because, Ukrainians are always there. But there is a tiny, tiny nuance here, because natural disasters and disasters like that, they look absolutely differently during wartime, because during wartime you have threat coming from drones, missile strikes, sabotage, lack of communication, and many, many others. What I'm talking about, for example, when a building collapses in Kiev somewhere due to the Russian missile strike, like it happened not only in Kiev, like in Dnipro, Zaporizhia, Kharkiv, we had such cases, we had a lot of them. Russian missile strikes the house, and the house collapses. There are people trapped under the debris. The rescuers rush to the scene. They start removing the debris. They start excavating the people. The Russians strike again the same very place, killing those people and killing the rescuers as well. So first of all, it's like, again, it's 1 millionth confirmation that Russians deliberately target the civilian buildings in Ukraine. And also, it's one of the cases to remember that there can be double tap, all right? They can strike the same location with their ballistic missiles, because there's somewhere there's Russian drone observing the area and coordinating those strikes. So that is something to remember, that something might happen. Then, lack of communication. In Ukraine, during the very first weeks of Russian invasion, I remember they deliberately tried to destroy all sorts of mobile towers, so Ukraine is running out of communication, literally. And they weren't successful, but they were partially successful, because I remember that the communication, the phone network was barely breathing, right? And hello to another Finn who loves Ukraine. Thank you so much. And lack of communication, again, that's something to remember, because first of all, the mobile network might fall. The electronic warfare will make your communication literally unexisting, all right? And you're there on the scene with your radio station that doesn't work and phone that doesn't work. So that might be another complication, and you need to have a set of measures. What sort of actions will you perform in case your communication fails, all right? So you need to think about that as well. That's crucially important. Again, in Ukraine, for example, we adapted to that. So we installed the batteries additional batteries, a lot of them, on different mobile towers. So, for example, if we previously had them, and they would deplete pretty fast, like within a couple hours. So currently we install many more additional batteries and also a generator to charge them in case something happens, all right? So this helps us to ensure that the communications in Ukraine will persist, and even if the blackout lasts many hours, 10 hours, 15 hours, the mobile network will still work, all right? So that is something that we prepare to. Again, in every house, for example, if you don't have the fiber optic cable, which is very good thing to have. In Germany, I checked all sorts of neighborhood here in the area, and it turns out that the fiber optic cables are not available. Like and the area is actually very big. So in Ukraine, the fiber optic internet was literally something that saved a lot of lives, because when you have a blackout, basically if you have fiber optic cable, you can have internet regardless of what is happening with the electricity situation in your city. Your internet always works. This is something to think about, okay? Because when you think that might probably not be good for business, think if it will be good for your life, all right? Fiber optic internet, but also in case you don't have fiber optic internet, because okay, in my house in Kiev I didn't have it either, but I had 1 GB internet. So even though we didn't have in some specific, my house was very old, even though we didn't have fiber optic internet installed in some specific houses around Kiev, but still, if you have a switch, the gateway to the internet, right? And then the cables coming from this gateway to all the apartments in the building. If you don't have fiber optic internet, but you have this stuff, it still can be equipped with batteries. I know this exactly because I checked with the local authorities. I checked the cellars of my very own house, and I could literally observe those batteries myself. The shelf with those batteries is like my height, all right? Like it was big, so the internet would keep working hours and hours, and maybe even tens of hours after the blackout started in the city. That is again something that we prepared to. How is Ukraine preparing for the next winter? Basically, just the way we prepared to the previous winter. We will talk about this. Okay, I will save your commentary to respond later. You still need a bit of power for the end of the fiber. Yes, exactly, but still less than with the typical wire. All right. So that's another thing to remember, that you gotta treat war not like natural disasters. There are many factors that add up to the complexity of the situation. That's something to keep in mind. Another thing is, of course, procurement, because when the full-scale invasion of Ukraine started, and all of a sudden, after a while, we realized that, all right, we need thermal vision cameras, we need night vision cameras, we need additional body vests, we need additional helmets and stuff like that. We need drones, of course. So we started getting those necessary things. We started to procure them via volunteers, via different organizations. But the very process of procurement, especially very early during the war, it was very easy. For example, Bundeswehr faces Russian invasion, and there's like a bunch of goons rolling across the fields on their tanks and golf carts, donkeys, maybe, I don't know, horses. and Bundeswehr is deflecting the attacks one after another, and eventually they will need some additional resources and equipment. How do they procure them? Of course, they won't have time to spend like 1 month procuring, for example, drones. So they need to simplify this link. And the procurement system in Germany is, of course, very perfect. It's very complicated and very perfect, but the perfect system during the war usually becomes very, very slow. And that is why, for example, German authorities, as well as all the other European authorities, should think about simplifying the links of this procurement chain. What will they simplify? What will they make less complicated in their procurement legislation? Because that will be absolutely crucial for the guys, all right? You don't have 2 weeks to wait until this batch of drones arrives from Portugal or from Ukraine. You need it yesterday, basically. So you need to think how to simplify this procurement and also adapt procedures for civilian volunteers. I remember, again, early during the invasion, it was via COVID, though. Okay, it's something not related. So in Ukraine, especially during the first months or after the beginning of the Russian full-scale invasion, basically volunteers would bring us all sort of stuff. Later, of course, the government realized that, God, we gotta regulate all this. And the reason it's done, it's not because, evil government wants to slow down the help. The reason it's done is literally because there's a lot of moments, a lot of, let's say, caveats, all right? So you receive a bunch of equipment that actually doesn't work, okay? That doesn't meet your requirements, and you only realize it during the combat, and actually it may lead to a lot of losses and stuff, and later you gotta understand how to avoid it and whom to keep responsible for this, all right? So this is important. That's one of the reasons why, for example, every soldier on the battlefield is writing a fire position card, all right? Guys in NATO do that, and guys in the Soviet armies, they also do that. Why? Basically, you have a card where you mark your sector, where you mark all the orienteers in your sector, what you see in front of you. Why do you do that? All right, like you can just sit there and just smoke and give absolutely no damns about that. But you're writing this, and you give the copy of this card to your sergeant, who later saves them for later. Why is this needed? All right, it's because in your fire card you have your sector and you have different ranges. You know that on this range you can only work using your rifle. This range you can already work with your machine gun, all right, because your rifle has shorter range than machine gun, obviously. This range goes like heavy machine guns and cannons and stuff like that. In case some civilian gets wounded, all right, during the combat, and the military prosecutor wants to make sure that, you acted according to the law, according to the rules of war and stuff like that, he collects all your cards and checks, all right, I see that the person that was wounded here couldn't be wounded by this soldier because this person was out of range. It was actually, for example, on the enemy territory, right? So things like that are very, very important, but it's also very important to understand that you need to, even though you have the procedures for civilian volunteers on delivering your unit different cars and equipment, but you also need to simplify it, make it fast, make it rapid. Procure now and authorize later, or procure fast. Authorize now, but do it fast, because it's crucial. That's another thing. I'm not a big expert in procurement myself. That's why that's just brief information coming from yeah, all sorts of our services, all right, who wanted this to be actually vocal. Um, Another thing is effective civil and military communication. Again, it's very, very important to have it established because during the wartime, you will have all sorts of disinformation launched against you. First, weeks of the full scale Russian invasion, we had all sorts of stuff. We had mysterious markers emerging on bridges and on the roofs of different buildings. We had mysterious marks made with spray paint. We had all sorts of stuff. People were actually scared and nervous all the time. Unfortunately, this caused quite a few cases of friendly fire. And this was a deliberate Russian psyops against Ukrainian army and Ukrainian population, because they used massively disinformation. They stole vehicles from captured positions in Chernobyl, for example, and they were rushing through our positions, shoot at will, like things like that. And you don't understand what is going on. You don't necessarily need to have a single source of information. In Ukraine, we had such source of information. We launched the telemarathon, and this telemarathon actually worked well because it was news 24/7. What is going on in different spots of the front line, what's going on around Kyiv, because Kyiv was under siege, what is happening like in other cities, in Mariupol, what the government says, what our experts say, and things like that. So we had this telemarathon running all the time, full of all sorts of updates 24/7. Again, it was very, very crucial because like Russians throw all sorts of shit. We read it in the previous stream that who was it? Zapiski Veterana, Voivode. I don't remember this idiot, but he's like 12 hours into our magnificent Russian invasion of Ukraine, and Ukrainian army is basically crippled and they will collapse, and our Spetsnaz is taking administrative buildings in Kyiv and stuff. People were actually very, very nervous, you can understand that, and we needed at least some centralized source of information, objective information, to understand what's going on. And then later, when they realized that actually Hostomel isn't taken, all right, later that Russians came with that huge column where they took Hostomel for a month. Then they had to retreat because Ukraine obliterated whatever, like 40 battalion tactical groups they had, or something like that, and whatever's left from them retreated. And only several months after that, we finally signed the land lease with the United States and with other allies. That's, by the way, to those who wear red hats and say that Ukraine is nothing. Without the help of our country, Ukraine would fall within the first 3 days. Basically, Ukraine held within the first 3 months without any help at all, without any military or humanitarian support from the world at all. Okay. Which doesn't mean that Ukrainians don't care about this, and Ukrainians are grateful for the American people, to the American people for their help, but to those imbeciles who think that Ukraine will have fallen itself, all right, no, not the case. At this point, Ukraine doesn't receive any sort of military support from the United States for 18 months. And as you see, Russian positions are slowly collapsing for some reason, even without the kind of support that was coming to Ukraine during President Biden, for example. So that's another thing, but I got distracted. Channel of communication, you gotta have it, and you gotta have not necessarily one, several will do, but with the same sort of messaging, all right? You gotta understand that your civilians have need for information. because absence of information as well as disinformation is usually demoralizing. You gotta have this one. Besides having those sources of information, you gotta have specific channel of communication established with your civilians to make sure that they react properly to your messages about upcoming strikes, about upcoming evacuation, yada yada. You have to have it functioning, and you have to build your messages in a way. You have all sorts of press services in your units and in your command to make it possible. They will do their job well, but you got to remember that your messages must be easy to understand, so your civilians know exactly where to go during the air alerts, that they clearly understand what is being said and they know what to do. All right, that when the air alert starts, you don't see your civilians coming to the bomb shelter with, like, a tent, a big umbrella, and a barbecue basket instead of their emergency backpack. All right, you should make them understand what they have to carry with them. It's important. Another thing. So you have reliable sources of information. You have the concept of this information. Someone is signaling behind my window like crazy for no apparent reason in the middle of the night. Besides that, you need to practice raising civil awareness, because civil awareness is confidence. I think I talked, it wasn't me, we'll talk about this. I think I talked about this case during the siege of Kiev, when one of the guys was brought to our colonel because he was afraid. And we're talking about the conscripts, all right? The 200 men, the brave 200 guys that defended Hostomel, and later they moved to Kiev, where we worked with a different unit for a while before Hostomel was liberated. So majority of those guys were like 20 years old. The majority of them were conscripts, a few contract soldiers, a few staff officers, including myself, for example. So one of the guys was brought by his sergeant to colonel, and young guy, 20 years old, and he's shaking. He's like, I don't know what to do. I'm scared. The colonel, he was a good guy. Generally, he was a good guy. But I think most probably he was either busy with something different or what, but he basically gave him a lecture. Your military debt. You have to protect your country, patriotism, your mother, your family, all that stuff. So the guy basically left the room shaking a bit more than before. And I talked to the guy. Again, I'm not saying that Colonel did bad job, but most probably me as a sergeant, I could actually do it a bit better, which I tried. So I talked to the guy and I go like, why are you scared? He's like, I'm just scared. I think that the death will just dive from the clouds and kill us all with laser rays. Like, I don't know what to expect. The missile will just fall and we will all die. I go, bro, do you know what to do in case of the alert? Like, let's imagine the Russians decide to throw their air assault or whatever is left from their paratroopers on this base. What do you do? He's like, I don't know. I go like, bro, go to your sergeant, talk to your sergeant, and ask what to do with in case of this emergency. Where's your position? Where's your sector? Where should you go? What sort of supplies, ammunition you should have with you? What is the territory you should control with your fire, right? Like, what's your sector? Learn this stuff. practice this stuff with your unit or by yourself. Just go there, sit there, and think, all right, in case something happens, my guys will be there, and I will sit here. I control this sector from that corner of building to that fence, and whatever I see there will die. That's basically it. And he's like, shit, all right. So he went later. I met him, and I'm like, so how's the progress? He's like, I don't feel scared like I do feel scared, but not like that. Like I feel much more confident from now on because I know what to do. All right. What we don't know is something that scares us the most, both military and civilians. All right. If you're a military and you're trained your whole life to fight against, I don't know, Russian infantry, and all of a sudden you see like a bunch of helicopters. Of course, that shit is sketchy. Something that, by the way, we faced, all right, something we experienced ourselves. We were prepared, and we had experience fighting against Russian infantry, Russian tanks, Russian artillery, and stuff. And then all of a sudden you have like 100 helicopters in Hostomel. Of course, that stuff is kind of sketchy. But then when you realize how to act in that situation, it becomes a bit less sketchy. Not like the fear doesn't disappear, but at least you know how to act. Same with the civilians. Civilians usually don't know what the war looks like at all. And because of that, they are extremely, extremely scared of war. They think that it's literally, chaos of death, uncontrollable elimination and destruction, which is not really the case because war, just like any other thing, is a science, but unlike any other science, there is absolutely nothing beautiful about war. All other sciences, whatever, like gynecology, even whatever you pick, everything is beautiful and everything is useful besides war, because there's nothing beautiful in the war. But it doesn't mean that in case the war starts, you will just be eliminated by the rays from a Death Star that just shoots at you from the sky. It's not like that, because everything has its logical beginning and logical end. Every bullet that is shot by somebody. All right, and it will land somebody. So you need to be prepared for that. You need to understand at least a bit about it. When I was a kid, I swear, I thought that military, the way military go to job, all right? Like you wake up, you take helmet, you wear your helmet, no matter if you're like, even if you live in your apartment, you wear your helmet, you wear your armored vest, vice versa. You wear your armored vest and then your helmet, and then you take your rifle, you take your RPG, and you go outside, you jump in your tank, and you go to job. That's what I thought when I was a kid. Or, for example, policeman, like basically the same. Yeah, like you wake up, you wear your body armor, you wear your helm, you take that big. Oh, oh my God! You take this big baton and basically put it behind your belt. You take like your whatever uh, submachine gun, everything, your police belt, and take your shield. And with the shield, you go to the bus station and go to job. That's what I thought when I was a kid. All right, not the case. Doesn't work like that. Um, yeah, I know it's crazy to think you take your rifle, but that's what I thought when I was like 5 years old. I barely remembered where my nose was, besides other body parts. So nowadays, civilians are pretty much the same. You ask people what the day of an army man looks like, and the civilian will answer based on what they see on the internet or in the TikTok, on the YouTube shorts. The other day I saw this short video about the army guys that are basically compared to teenagers with expensive toys, which is Basically, yeah, that's the case. Like you have a bunch of teenagers. I believe in Ukraine, you start being teenager around 19 or 21. I don't remember, but um, basically, yeah, you join the army and you are technically still a kid. But according to the legislation, not only you are already criminally responsible, right? Like a grown-up civilian, but also you're given a tank or a heavy machine gun on board of a helicopter or anything else. So yeah, and civilians judge the army based on things like that. Instead of your press officer explaining to civilians what the army really is, all right, instead of your press officer, the social media talk, all right, and that's very, very bad because all sorts of people can talk in those social media instead of you, all right. Sometimes they're good, sometimes not really. For example, before the full-scale invasion, I remember me and other guys, we would often go to the school next to my base that Russians later occupied, those Kadyrovites and stuff, and they turned it into a position for their mortar. We would usually go to that base, or we would be invited from time to time, and we would talk about our experience in the anti-terrorist operation slash joint task, the joint forces operation in Donbass, because that is something that even kids need to know. Don't tell them about what happens when the bullet hits somebody, you know? Things like that. Tell them necessary things. Okay, when the enemy invades, you have good guys sitting here, all right? What they will do? They will move there, they will tell you, okay, there is a bomb shelter, please keep it in mind, or they will tell you to evacuate. And generally, they will go there, they will establish their positions, they will be kicking the enemy butts and stuff. You have to explain the basics so people literally understand how it works. Okay, it's not only about the military. Generally, when you think about this, people don't know what the day of a policeman looks like. All right, we like based on movies with my God, was Mr. Bean with Rowan Atkinson, right? No, that's not the thing. That's not the source to learn what the day of a policeman look like. Um, I don't know, like tram drivers, all right? So I don't really blame people for not knowing that. I blame the people responsible for communications with the civilians that they don't inform them enough. And generally speaking, I blame a lot of people. I blame like governments. I blame decision makers. I blame them. All right. So your civilians must at least have like some kind of impression what army does, what is responsible for. Again, even during some sort of internal unrests, all right, you need to go to your civilians. You need to tell them, guys, we won't be like running over your bodies with tanks, all right? It's not our job. We're military. We don't do that stuff. Police don't does that stuff. Just kidding. Like, you need to explain those things. You need to keep constant communication with the civilians, and then you will be freaking fine. I tell you this, guys, a lot of misconceptions, misunderstandings, and the biggest scandals that you can observe on the television, in the media, they can be avoided if both parties are freaking informed, if they have proper communication, right? Because according to my personal experience, majority of those things that could be easily avoided, they all happen literally on an empty place because some guys had wrong impression and other guys couldn't explain why they were wrong. I'm talking government and military, I'm talking military and civilians and stuff like that. proper communication is the key, okay, as well as respect. That's the thing we should understand. Therefore, why this lesson is important is because if your civilians, if your population understands what the war looks like, what is happening on the war generally, all right, that artillery that is located like 300 kilometers away won't be able to strike your neighborhood, okay, but the gliding bomb might, because it can be dropped like 100 kilometers away. That is something to remember. They must be informed and therefore be more confident. All right. You will see less panic, you will see less anxiety in your civilians. They will know what to expect, and this makes war less scary. That's the word. So they should understand, for example, where do they go during a strike, all right? You will be impressed. Even after training our civilians, even after informing them, we still have those cases when I go outside, for example, going to the bomb shelter because I had a key, and I see a bunch of people literally standing like this, like looking into the sky as if something interesting might happen there, digging like coal in their noses. I'm like, why aren't you in the bomb shelter? They're like, we don't know where to go. Really? So those things will be happening all the time. And the more you work to eliminate those gaps, the better, the more lives you will save. Again, very good example. I had key from the bomb shelter. Okay, what happens if something happens to me from I don't know, reactive diarrhea to COVID, for example? I am not there to open the bomb shelter. And such cases, by the way, already happened. Thank God, not with me, but unfortunately, they already happened, I believe, in 2023, when a mom with a child were going to the bomb shelter. The shelter was closed, and the remains of the drone or a missile that was intercepted, they crashed into this family and killed them. So after that, we realized that the bomb shelters should be open 24/7. They should be always available for people to reach. And besides that, it also raises a lot of very interesting questions. For example, what sort of security do you provide for the bomb shelters? For the people in bomb shelters. What I'm talking about is that there is a big threat coming, for example, from the useful idiots, or even from teenagers that were recruited through playing Roblox, all right? They were recruited by FSB because that's what FSB does in Roblox, just for your information. And they were recruited and told to bring the bomb to the bomb shelter. Because why not? What was the reason for Russians to attack civilians with the bomb in the bomb shelter? What's the reason for a mad dog to bite, right? Doesn't need a reason to bite. So such cases unfortunately happened. The most recent case happened in Nova Poshta. That's a Ukrainian post service like DHL, basically, when another bomb exploded literally a couple of days ago, killing one of the employees. How do you protect your bomb shelters? So you need either surveillance or some kind of security. Somebody gotta stay there all the time to make sure that there are no suspicious people bringing suspicious things. Because in many cases, for example, people, instead of running with their belongings, with their mat, whatever, sleepers, I don't know, all the time, even the emergency backpacks, they just bring everything to the bomb shelter and keep it there, all right? Which on one hand is okay, because in some areas of Ukraine, especially now, you can hear the air alerts like 10 times a day. But on the other hand, how do you make sure that they don't bring anything bad, all right? So you need to have at least some kind of basic security there, some kind of basic surveillance, somebody to check the order, all right? Again, that's very important. Who can that be? What sort of people can you assign? Do you have to pay them salary or whatever? So those are questions that you gotta answer already, all right, before the situation starts. What would happen if drones were as common as now? We will talk about this as well. So, before the guess to intimidate and terrorize civilians, yeah, well, technically, all Ukrainians are enemies to Russians. That is why when they see Ukrainian civilian casualties, they celebrate in their social media like crazy. That is why they do it. Yeah, of course, to demoralize and intimidate. That's the main reason. Um, so that's another thing. People need to know answers to such questions. Where to find cover, what to do during the electric blackout or heating water blackout. What do I do? Where do I get water? They must be informed. Dude, there's a well, there's an invincibility point. There you may find water at all times. Will I have to evacuate from my city? All right, you live in a frontline town or town located not far from the front line, and the combat starts somewhere like 20 kilometers away. For example, imagine you live in a town like Kramatorsk, right? The combat starts and the enemy forces arrive, and your guys start fighting against them, deflecting their offensives, and you stay in your city and you ask yourself, do I evacuate? So, what's the answer to this? First thing you should understand is that when there is a need to evacuate the population of the city, the citizens, the services will announce this. All right. For example, they announce we need to evacuate all the kids or all the families with the kids. Okay, because it becomes very, very dangerous on the streets. Like in Kherson, for example, there's Russians attacking like children playing football on the streets and stuff like that. We all know that the so-called Russian safari. Um, so, my friend, I am a Terminator just a bit, especially today. So you evacuate according to the situation. Of course, you can just like leave now. It's up to you. But if you work in the city, if there's your family and everything else, all your property, listen to what the government says, to what the local authorities are saying. Ask policemen, for example. You can literally, like, policemen don't bite. You can come up to a like any cop on the streets and ask about the situation. Communicate with your policeman. They like to talk. We all enjoy it. I tell you that as a former cop myself. I can guarantee that we enjoy talking. Okay, and they will tell you what's the situation. Should you expect the evacuation? What's the probability of this? All right, ask the guy. Ask what's the probability of this, and what's his personal thought on this. The cops will talk about this, but people should be informed about such things. What to do in case of combat taking place in the vicinity of your city. Should you evacuate immediately? The authorities should tell the people how to react, what to expect, all right, what to look for. What the military do and what the war look like, we already talked about this one. Your civilians must understand basics. They must understand the principles. The people think that they will see the war every single day. Friends, 8 years of war in Donbass before the full-scale invasion, people could hardly see the war happening at all. All right, in some areas. In other areas, it was of course different when Russian shells arrive and stuff like that. But most of the time, they don't see the war happening actually. All right. There are tracing bullets flying somewhere on the horizon. You can see flashes again taking place on the horizon somewhere. You can hear like bangs or explosions or like claps if you're a Russian, right? But you don't see it happening at all. Why? Because usually it takes place on the positions. Positions are far away from the cities before it's too late, of course. Positions are far away. You don't see them when civilian emerges somewhere in the military position. Usually, this civilian feels very, very sorry for doing that because he will be asked all sorts of inconvenient questions by both policemen and military on those positions. What the hell is he doing there? He will have, or she will have their phone checked and all the background checked all the way to their furthest relatives. Because what did you do on the military position, my friend? All right. That's why in most cases they have absolutely no idea what it is. And again, that is why it's very, very crucial to talk about this. And final lesson that I can think of, not final, but final on my list, is that the war we study today is already outdated. I think that you will agree with me because 2014, the war was completely different from the war of 2019. 2014, it was the hottest phase of the war, when there were a lot of, scared and angry Ukrainians, partially scared, partially angry. We were like running around with eyes like this, like, where do we go? Give us rifles, That's when the National Guard was formed. That's when the voluntary battalions were formed. That's when the Ukrainian army started to be reformed, reformatted, and developed, basically. 2019, we have like trained commandos. 4th Operative Brigade of the National Guard, RUBIZH, it was before it became RUBIZH, trained according to the latest NATO standards, utilizing the NATO tactics, military decision-making process, MET-TC, all that stuff, all right, all the fancy words. We had this sort of operation in Svitlodarsk, Baltic, Zaitsevo, Travneve. Russians were crying. Okay, so 2022, it's a completely different war because even in 2019, 2020, you couldn't expect like ballistic strikes, you couldn't expect cruise missiles, airstrikes, etc., etc. However, shellings, tank attacks, infantry attacks, Russian Spetsnaz, ninjas jumping into the trenches and stuff like that. We had all that shit. Then 2022, the big war begins. Of course, it's a different story. Already in 2022, Max, my second press officer in the brigade, he said that he was actually targeted with all sorts of armor, like with every single branch. He was hit by Russian aviation, he was hit by Russian artillery, Russian infantry, Russian tanks, and because the Russian Black Sea Fleet, when it was still alive, because they launch cruise missiles and ballistic missiles, he was hit by the Russian fleet as well. So basically, the dude was attacked by everybody, including the Russian cosmic forces, because they call their Air Force and cosmic forces. Yeah, not something I'd particularly be proud of, but on the other hand, that's absolutely crazy to think about this. 2023 was already a bit different war because more and more unmanned systems and artillery were used. Okay, that was the war when Russians already improved their positions, their lines of defense, and Ukraine couldn't perform their operations effectively, because obviously we didn't have much air force. We did things that NATO armies would consider absolutely freaking insane, all right? Like, how the hell do you go through a minefield and attack a Russian position without air support? Like, be honest, my friends. Tell me there in the chat if you would ever do that. If you were, like, I don't know, American soldier, would you go with your unit across a minefield to a Russian position that is not suppressed by the close air support and try to clear the Russian position? I bet that you would not, because like every other normal human being, you want to live. Right, Ukrainians also want to live, but we had to do it. We kept trying, we failed, we were successful in other cases, but we understood our capacity, what we can and what we cannot do. Therefore, 2024, it's when the attack drones became a good response to Russia's overwhelming manpower, to Russia's meat waves. And we realized that you can literally eliminate tank that costs millions of dollars using a drone that costs $500. And you can also use the same very drone that drops stuff and use it multiple times, for example, and make a very, very good footage in glorious HD, footage of Russians becoming better, turning into fertilizer for our cucumbers and tomatoes, and share it all over the social media, so we would celebrate and, to make us happy. That's why 2025, 2026, we can see development on that. We can already see emerging ground platforms. We can see that already. The Terminators, all right, the Skynet. I do it all the time in Call of Duty. Yeah, that's where I do it as well. All right. So we can see this thing developing. We can see literally unmanned ground vehicles holding positions, deflecting Russian attacks, which makes the whole war. I cannot say that it makes it easier, like on a cruise. It doesn't make it easier, but it makes it much more bearable, much more effective. The active defense that Ukrainian defenders are performing is much more bearable because of that. Russians still have to throw meat, because there's no way you can take ground without your presence there, right? You gotta physically be there, either infantry or your Spetsnaz or whatever, but somebody gotta be there to install the flag. And we can see that for Ukrainian defenders having plenty of robotized systems. Some of them are, by the way, autonomous at this point. We will talk about this later. I need to try Kherson watermelon. Oh my god, I miss those watermelons myself so much. So we can see that unmanned systems made life so much easier for Ukrainians. For Russians, not that much, even though Russians produce enormous amount of drones and stuff, but they have to physically go there and become good, okay? They gotta physically, send somebody on crutches across the field and see where Ukrainians will shoot him from, but doesn't happen because he's now being obliterated by good Ukrainian drones remotely and become a better person, okay? Some cringy widow somewhere in the Ust-Pizdyusk watching him becoming better in the Telegram channel and is like, yay, this is the best day of my life. I will have Lada, I will fix my boobs, I will go to Malta and have a sexy photo shoot and find another idiot to send him to the war. Basically, life cycle of a Russian widow. So that is 2025, 2026. We can see it already happening. We can see that Ukrainians can now invest more into unmanned systems than into literally mobilizing everybody, and spending like crazy money training them as an infantry and literally sacrifice them. That's why you don't see that happening. I just talked to my lady about the crazy fact that 63% of Russians end up being good, and only the rest, 37, go home as wounded. That is something absolutely crazy. But on the other hand, you can see literally confirmation of that every single day in the Discord. Ali shared a video with, I counted like 104 Nazi Bolsheviks turning into fertilizer. There is another video where someone counted like 114. Same video, 3 minutes, coming from Madyar, I believe. And it's crazy to think about this because not often you can see like Russian companies being obliterated, merging with Ukrainian soil like that. Literally companies, and you can see each face. You can see every single Russian before he jumps to the other side, to the places Nazi Bolsheviks never thought existed, right? That's absolutely insane, but it's something that we can see happening. Which is, by the way, very, very good because not only we can confirm every single Russian casualty, but we can also help Russian widows become a bit better. All right. So, what else? The reason I started this topic that the war we study today is already outdated because we always learn about the past wars. And if you want your army to be effective, you need to learn the most recent experience. Always. To understand what's the tendencies, where it goes, what to prepare to. And in order to do that, you need to have constant contact with Ukrainian army, with Ukrainian defenders, and learn their experience as much as possible. Ukrainians are very, very happy to share. We're not greedy. We can do it. We don't mind. All right. Learn the most recent experience and try to implement it everywhere. Learn not only what helped Ukrainians, but also what helped Russians fail. That's very important to learn. Learn your enemy's mistakes. And besides that, we need to avoid misconceptions in order to avoid ugly surprises. Because currently, armies of Europe, all right, Ukrainian partners, Ukrainian allies, currently they are preparing to fight Russia on a battlefield. They don't prepare to fight Russia in the social media and on the streets. They don't prepare to fight Russian media on servers and on the websites, on databases, on mobile networks, and in other areas where Russian cyber attacks usually take place. So that's something else to remember because currently the armies, and it's not a wrong thing what they're doing, right? They prepare for Russia's invasion that will be utilizing like manpower, golf carts, tanks, again, donkeys and stuff. Shit, when the war starts here, I will literally join Bundeswehr because I want to see the reaction on the faces of German guys observing Russians attacking them on the backs of donkeys. That will be just something to remember. But that will happen, of course. You have to be prepared for that. You have to be prepared for like Russian paratroopers jumping into the trenches, ninjas and stuff. But you gotta be also prepared for other kind of warfare. And currently this kind of warfare is something that Russia is very, very efficient at. So we're talking about the hybrid warfare. We are talking about utilizing the civil society against the state. Okay, you can see the results of the Russian Russian Davos, Putin's Davos, right? The St. Petersburg Forum, you can see that all sorts of crazy and sketchy people visited this place. Today I saw the video by Combat Veteran Reacts. Oh my god, the introduction to this video is just so cool, and he says it in a way like oh my god, what did he say? The Epstein story told us that sometimes it's very, very hard to tell what kind of person is actually a big piece of shit. But when you look at the forum in Davos, you can clearly see who is who. And I'm like literally lying in front of the screen and screaming from laughter. You know, that it was so good. If you're not surprised to Combat Veteran Reacts, please do. You should. It's not necessary for you to subscribe to my channel. His channel is, you know, must see. All right, must follow. It was just so nice. So Davos, you can see like Candace Owens, you can see Scott Ritter, all sorts of freaks, literally. Besides them, of course, there were like Russia's allies from Burkina Faso, you know, other interesting places. But besides them, there were also leaders of some of the very, very powerful European parties, especially in Deutschland. And those guys return home and they start explaining that Russia is actually good guys, that they don't want to invade, that they are awesome, that you need to hear them. It literally happens not because they are in love with Russia, they enjoy balalaika, vodka, they love to eat shif from like Russia's, Russian lapti. No, it's not like that. Most obviously, it's because they receive some benefits for doing that, all right? And there is a very, very big hope and responsibility, okay, that is placed on security services and intelligence agencies, because if they fail to protect their society from Russian money that is being pumped into this society through different opinion makers, through different so-called influencers, if they are unable to understand how it works, expose those connections, then they will be the first link that actually fails, the first Rubicon of protection, frontier of defense that actually collapsed. They are very, very much responsible for protecting the civil society from such attacks, and this is crucial to understand. Those guys are doing an amazing job, and we expect even more from them because their job is extremely, extremely, extremely important. Very important to find the links between the Russian terrorists pumping those money into your society through those channels and expose those links. It's like I cannot tell what is more important, to do it before the war starts or to literally try to liquidate the results of Russia's war and disaster that hit your country because you weren't able to do that. That's something so important to understand. Okay, so we gotta pray for those guys day and night. Besides that, of course, we have to understand that there's a lot of different influencers. For example, in Germany, imagine some hypothetical, I don't know, Alisa Weidebust or Alicia Weidenudel, all right, who says we have to talk to Russians, we have to buy their gas. Russians were misunderstood. Russians are the best people in the world. Europeans fucking suck. French, British, like, I hate you. We Germans, we have to hug Russians, we have to rely on Russians, we have to be the best partners with Russians ever. And only this will make Deutschland great again, you know? So if you are like a conscious person, if you have at least some kind of consciousness left in your head, you'll probably ask yourself, what sort of countries are or can be called successful partners of Russia? Besides Burkina Faso, of course, because Burkina Faso cannot be reached. You know, the level of Burkina Faso, that's something completely unreachable for any given European country, right? But what countries can be called successful when it comes to Russia? What sort of Russia's allies are successful? And do you really think that Russians try to partner with somebody because they want that country to be successful? I don't really think that's the case, unless, of course, you want to become second North Korea. Welcome, all right? So I don't think that's the case. They don't partner with countries to make them successful. And on the opposite side of this thought, they don't partner with successful countries, usually, okay? Because it doesn't benefit them at all. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But what I wanted to say with all this is, yeah, North Korea, like, extremely successful country, just what I say. Yeah, Alicia Weidemaus, for example, like some hypothetical person. Weideknop. So the hybrid warfare is the kind of warfare that Russia is very good at. And this warfare aims not only our military objects, not only our armies, but also our mind. That is something to remember, and luckily I can see that there are slight reactions to that already coming from different governments. I was very critical about this 2 years ago. Now I am less critical, but I still am. And also, yeah. For example, Belarus. Belarus is such an amazing, such a successful place. All right, such a kingdom. Yeah. Lukashenko Stan, Lukashenko Reich. I would call it like this. So the hybrid warfare is waged against every single European country at this point. Russia spends billions not only on its propaganda, but also on its cyber warfare, on all sorts of influencers, you name it. And you can actually tell that this is happening. Literally a couple of years ago, we talked about the FBI documents that were declassified and delivered to the court, where they were talking about Russia investing in the communication operations in countries like Germany, where they want the Germans to reach the level of fear of future that would be higher than 55%, which is their KPI, basically, the goal they reach as a result of their informational warfare operation. And 2 years ago, that was too soon, yet this year you can actually see that Russia is slowly going there, and that more and more people around Europe, due to this artificially pumped hysteria, my God, immigrants, Ukrainians eating your dogs and cats, all right, things like that. You can see that actually the society is reaching this level. What is the way to fight it? Ask your intelligence officers. Better don't ask them, just let them do their job properly. Finance them, help them, support them, love them, respect them, and they will do their job just fine. Because, again, as I mentioned, that's very important. And the reason why Russians utilize the hybrid warfare before the full-scale warfare is, of course, because Russians understand that if they attack NATO as it is, like Russia will stop existing very, very soon. NATO countries have much bigger population. NATO countries have much bigger weaponry and stuff like that. They gotta suck in terms of drones at this point. They're still learning from Ukraine. Ukraine's still helping them develop this, but like they're going in the proper direction. But even with all that, NATO countries in Europe have so many things like HIMARS systems. Like Ukraine has literally 20, and they turned into legend in Ukraine. European countries have hundreds of those HIMARS systems. Russian army has absolutely no chance. Russia doesn't have anything that is even closely reminding the HIMARS systems. Okay, so that is the reason why Russians are utilizing the kind of warfare that NATO cannot respond to. Like drones in Poland, like drones in Romania. I'm talking about the flying drones in Romania. Like drones flying over the German airports, like drones flying over airports in Denmark. And many, many other cases, like post packages in like DHL offices, all of a sudden going in the flames and things like that. Okay, so that is the kind of warfare that NATO armies cannot respond to in a military way, in the conventional way. And that is why Russia is very, very good at waging this warfare. So you gotta prepare for this, and you gotta avoid misconceptions, because of course it's very good that you prepare for Russians bravely attacking you on the backs of horses and donkeys, but by preparing for this warfare and completely ignoring the real warfare actually happening on your territory, you are preparing the ground for your very own defeat. And this is again very, very, very important to remember. You can train as much as possible for, deflecting the Russian attack against NATO, but at the same time, Alicia Weidewurst, together with her little friends, funded from Kremlin, will spend several years brainwashing your very, very own population that we don't need NATO. We should separate. We can be the greatest country on earth ourselves. All right. And basically, after you are prepared and you have drones and stuff like that, all of a sudden you see that all that is good, but you don't have NATO allies anymore because your country just quit NATO yesterday. And Russians are saying, hello, why do you repress Russian-speaking population? You go like, what? They go, you have to be denazified, bastard. You go like, dude, what are you talking about? I have never even seen them in my neighborhood. No, you killed them, you raped them. We are sending the Russian peacekeepers, all right? And that is basically the way the war actually starts in your country, okay? And the guys from the Bundeswehr will be sitting there and thinking, just like we thought, okay, back in the days, that, sometimes the civilians that you love and appreciate and basically pledge to give your life for, sometimes they fucking elect some prick, and you have to run like a motherfucker with a rifle somewhere in the tree lines because of that. Don't do that. Be conscious of your choice, and remember that sometimes it's much better for something not to happen than years after that if you survive. Talk to your grandkids and go, there was a time when we elected Alicia Weidenudel. It was such a period because so many things happened after that. And we were, oh my God, where were our eyes? Why did we do that? Ukrainians had this amazing experience with Yanukovych, even though Yanukovych is known for forging elections, but we had this experience with him. And by the way, quite a few Ukrainians voted for Yanukovych for that very reason, because the dude said everything will be fine. Don't worry, be happy. The first thing we gotta do is we gotta kick all the bastards that don't let us live properly, all right? And everything will be fine. Okay, that was basically the same recipe as, you know, the Haitians that eat your dogs and cats. Those immigrants stealing your jobs and eating your Bürgergeld like crazy at the same time. I don't know how it works though. You know, when immigrants receive like the money from the job center because they don't work, and at the same time they steal all the jobs from the white people. How the hell to explain this phenomenon? I have literally no idea. But again, it works very, very well when this stuff is delivered from the mouths of people like Alina Weidewurst. Let's call her like that. So that is my point, my friends. Please let me know what you think about this. There were several commentaries. So how is Ukraine preparing for the next winter? Thank you so much for this one. We are preparing our gas networks on the first place to Russia's attacks, because we know that Russia will keep attacking the heating facilities and heating power plants and power plants in general. That's why I saw the interview with chief of Ukrainian Naftogaz, who said that Ukraine is preparing diversification of this system. Crazy thing to think about, my friend. In 2010, 2011, I worked in the municipal heating reform project. It was a USAID project, and we will talk about this one as well, I promise. So we will talk, this project was responsible for actually promoting the idea of centralized heating among the Ukrainian population, because it's easier to basically control and manage and cheaper. And also Ukraine, as a post-Soviet country, had very, very much developed centralized heating system in any given city. All right. And my project was actually promoting this. But we didn't know that Russians will be striking those facilities, unfortunately. If we knew that, we would promote a different thing, which is currently being promoted in Ukraine. So we're promoting the idea of every single family literally equipping itself with different heaters. And we are multiplying this system. We are diversifying it. So that, I hope, answers your question just a bit. I remember one of our ministers told Ukraine that we can't help because Ukraine basically had already lost. Thank God I don't remember that, my friends. I would laugh though, you know, because like literally I've heard so many times that we already lost. I've heard it starting the very, very first day of Russian war. Literally, we just returned from Hostomel. I'm like sitting, you know, still sweaty, and I'm reading news, and Russians already, yay, celebrating on the Russian streets, saying that basically Ukraine collapsed, and Douglas McGregor was also saying the same, between being drunk and being like having another case of dementia. All right, so we've heard that a lot. That's not the scariest thing. Can you explain the big disagreement between Poland and Zelensky? So, first of all, there is disagreement about the heroes of UPA. That is the name of one of the Ukrainian special force units that is named after the Ukrainian partisan army, Украинская повстанская армия. What those guys are known for? First of all, they are known for fighting against Bolsheviks, against Nazi Germans, um, against those guys. They are also known for fighting against Polish Armia Ludowa and Armia Krajowa. So for Ukraine, they are kind of heroes because they fought against Germans and Russians. For Poles, they are kind of villains because they are responsible for Volhynia massacre, and they fought basically against Polish guys. To me, this is again one of the biggest cases that, of history being absolutely freaking bloody and unfair, because 30 years before, 20 years before the UPA emerged in Ukraine, there was a brilliant case of amazing Ukrainian cooperation where Marshal Pilsudski, together with Ottoman Simon Petlura, together Polish and Ukrainian army went to Kiev, kicked the butts of the Bolsheviks in Kiev. They had mutual parades and everything was fine, you know. This is the way it's supposed to be. Ukraine and Poland supposed to work like that. So current discussion is, I will call it a disgrace, okay, because instead of fighting against the same enemy, we are creating problems out of nothing, both in Poland and Ukraine. And this is my personal position, because I have great respect to Polish guys. Polish metal band Behemoth are dudes, all right, are the dudes. They, by the way, support Ukraine. They were very, very happy to learn that actually Ukrainians created a new UAV called Behemoth. How cool is that? But at the same time, we have such cases in our history, and people are still trying to understand who was wrong and who was right. In my personal opinion, we gotta admit that we were all wrong when it comes to literally atrocities from both sides, because they were committed by both sides, let's be honest. But the very, very reason why this is happening is literally because of agriculture. I will open a big secret, because whenever we have similar topics, whenever we have like historical based conflicts, usually it happens with the background of messages like Poland will face enormous pressure and Polish agricultural products will fail. I am not bullshitting you, because literally a couple of days ago, as far as yesterday, give me just a second. Yes, Deputy Marshal of Polish Sejm Zgorzelski said that Ukraine entering European Union in its current format means end of Polish agriculture. And basically, this is the source of everything you hear about Ukrainian UPA, Ukrainian rebels, Banderites, and all that stuff. It's all about grain. That's my personal opinion. This commentary is very, very proper here, because, of course, such conflicts are fueled by the Russian psyops, and Russians basically support people. There was some Polish influencer who actually published this cringy map of Ukraine divided by Russia and Poland, just like Russian psyops did in 2019, and since that time I remember that. And he said, oh, instead of supporting those Ukrainians, we should freaking take their territory. We should return, you know, the historical territories of Poland. We should take Belarus and part of Ukraine and stuff. So that dude is literally... I hope that he receives money from Russians. Literally, I hope that he does. Because if he doesn't, and he does all that cringy stuff for free, then I believe even the stupidest seashell during mating period has much more IQ than that dude. Okay, so that's whatever you wanted to hear from me about the Polish situation. Um, Me personally, do I consider heroes of UPA heroes? I believe that, when you fight against Russians and don't commit crimes, you are a hero. When you start committing crimes and start committing atrocities, uh, this removes your status of hero, and there's always law and morality, and we gotta base our judgment based on those two. All right, how moral it is what you're doing and how legal it is what you're doing. Currently, Russia failed in both because Russia invaded Ukraine, which was illegal, and generally speaking, going to a foreign country and taking its territory is absolutely immoral from any standpoint. Um, as for Poles, that was a very, very difficult period of time when both Ukrainian population was treated very, very bad by Polish, and Polish population was also treated very, very bad by the Ukrainian Повстанська Armia. But at the same time, ask yourself, so Ukraine was occupied, that territory of Ukraine was occupied or under control of Poland. Was it like, look at this from its perspective. Ukraine has never occupied any territory. Ukraine never invaded other countries, except Russia, of course, earlier that year, but it was justified. But it wasn't like, Ukraine invaded Poland and then started mistreating Polish people and then like did bad things. Generally speaking, like west of Ukraine was controlled by Poland itself in every shape of Poland. So this raises questions. This raises a lot of questions. Yeah, but the fact is that both people on both sides were mistreated, and we gotta admit that we should accept this fact, and we should do whatever we can to never repeat this. That's my position. How much does Ukraine blame a Belarusian for being brainwashed by Moscow? Oh my God, it's the kind of discussion I had with my lady the other day, because she said, like, if you were born in Russia, you would probably also be atrocious and evil. And I think about this. On one hand, she might be right, of course, because if I was born in I don't know, like North Korea, I would be completely brainwashed. I would cry on the grave of Kim Il-chen. I would be absolutely crazy and atrocious, of course. But on the other hand, humanity exists because we have basic understanding of morale. All right, when an invader from Ust-Pizdysk, like this guy here, let me show you a picture of like typical Russian invader from Ust-Pizdysk. Like, my God, like this one. An Ochir Bairovich from Inzagatuy, who tried to take Malotokmachka and failed. One of the fastest Russian losses in this war. The dude went to the war in August 2025. September he became better. June 2026 he got buried. So when individuals like this what his name is, when they go to Ukraine, when they travel thousands of kilometers from their Ust-Pizdyisks, to come to Ukraine and steal a toilet and commit some sexual crime against a minor and kill them and bury them in the mass grave somewhere in Bucha, all right? So what do they do when they face responsibility? Like if they survive, like for example, if there's a trial, what do they say? They say, I was brainwashed. I killed those civilians because I was brainwashed. Doesn't work like that, because no matter where you come from, if you come from Afghanistan, if you come from Russia, if you come from North Korea, wherever you come from, you have your eyes to see, okay? You have ears to hear, and you have your brain to understand the consequence. All right? I don't know any country where law doesn't work completely. Even in Russia, sometimes they put people in the jail if they are like too atrocious, right? Like some maniacs or rapists, so they can fuel the Russian army, replace the losses in the Russian army later with those maniacs. But generally speaking, even there, some basic laws, they still work. And we all have like three very, very important organs, all right, body parts, to not do complete shit, to not do insane shit. We have eyes to see, majority of us does. We have ears to hear, again, majority. And 100% people, 99% again, except one yellow guy that I know on a different continent, have brain to understand the consequence. And that is why it doesn't work. I was brainwashed since my birth, all right? I was brainwashed. You wasn't brainwashed to go and rape. You wasn't brainwashed to go and shoot civilians. You wasn't brainwashed to go and invade other countries generally, because Russia doesn't have Ministry of War. Again, like that yellow guy. Russia has ministry they call Ministry of Defense, right? Even though technically it's not Ministry of Defense. It's a Ministry of Snatched Air Conditioners and Ministry of Rape, but generally they at least call it Ministry of Defense. When you join the Russian army, you join it as a defender. You don't join it as a rapist. You don't join it as a freaking pedophile. You don't join it as a war criminal, okay? But that's like in theory. In reality, that's exactly what is happening in the terrorist state. So that's my point. You can, like, at least basically understand what is good and what is evil. Everybody can. I don't believe that there is a place in the world where people literally don't understand the difference between like good and evil. All right. Even in Somalia, all right, even in Somalia, where government doesn't like kind of does exist on paper, but can't watch something that doesn't exist. Well, I've seen some footage. Okay, I've seen some footage of Ukrainian drones performing dissection of several Russian degenerates. So, to my surprise, even they have something inside their heads. From time to time, at least. I didn't see like in each head, but at least some of them had some kind of substance, some fertilizer. They say it's very good for Ukrainian crops. So, my dear friends, that's the lecture for you. Again, it wasn't me. Thank you so much for provoking me for this one. Okay, I really, really hope that it will be useful for some of you. If not, still thank you so much for watching, because you know that I enjoy having these conversations with you. And yeah, I gotta take a sip. I'm sorry. Is it time to talk about food? What are the recent news? First of all, let me introduce. President Zelensky and King Charles. This person is the president of Ukraine. This person is current king of the United Kingdom, and there's also Russians. They're not present on this picture, but Russians say through in different individuals, different cadences. My God, talkers and stuff. They say that this man stole this place, this palace, from this man, from the royal family, and basically royal family nowadays can be observed sleeping somewhere under the bridge in Cardiff, catching rabbits and hamsters. Generally speaking, it's a good place to sleep with your royal family under the bridge because there's generally a lot of hamsters and other creatures that can be captured, especially in Cardiff. I'm just kidding. Yeah, but that's like one of the cases of the terror Russian disinformation that some still believe is true. Also, President Zelensky talked with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Oh, I feel like physically I need to laugh when I hear their news, but my brain already rejects this urge because they are too ridiculous to be funny. Soon they will be funny again, though. So he talked to them and basically told them about Russia's threats to Ukraine, to the United States, and yada yada. I don't really believe that they understood at least a single minute or like 30 seconds of what President Zelensky told them. Obviously, even if they did understand, most probably they just like this information is something they don't need. They don't care about this. Like they came to Ukraine because President Trump told them, but generally they're like, the fuck are we doing here? Oh my god, do you have hookers? No, not today. Oh shit, like what? We're meeting your president tomorrow. Fuck. Oh, all right. Jared, let's go to Moscow next time. At least they have hookers. Things like that. And vodka, of course. Two freaking degenerates. Sometimes I feel very, very bad about calling them for what they are, like degenerates, because it's not professional. My channel, after all, like, I'm a former military, I'm a former law enforcement officer and stuff, and, I'm not supposed to actually be very emotional on my channel. However, who said that I cannot do that on my channel? But anyways, sometimes, I feel sorry for calling them degenerates and imbeciles because that is something that triggers me very, very much. On the other hand, I believe that if I don't do it, it means that I'm not honest with you, my dear friends. That is why I call them for what they are. So, what else? There was a cloud of healthy smoke observed in St. Petersburg today. You might ask, what the hell is that shit? So that is a chemical factory. That is the healthiest smoke possible. I hope that the Russians inhale it deeply, as deep as they can, especially if they love Putin. It's very, very important. I bet that you want to hear some Russian cringe, and I will give you this opportunity. So there was a case, again, in St. Petersburg. I don't know why St. Petersburg is mentioned so many times. These days, maybe for obvious reasons, like it becomes a trend these several weeks. So in St. Petersburg, a citizen of the city was arrested and fined. He had to pay $400 to the Russian government because he spoke on WhatsApp. But not only because he spoke on WhatsApp through VPN, of course, and stuff, but because he actually said what he thought on WhatsApp. He spoke with another person, and according to the Russian Crime Enforcement Service, he started discrediting Russian army. Basically, what he said was like either, I don't know, they can't fight, or like they look kind of funny when they ride in the battle on top of horses, something like that. Maybe he said that they look kind of cringy when Ukrainian drones deatomize them when they carry a toilet or like a snatched carpet from some Ukrainian village. So he said something that the Russians decided is discreditation of the Russian army, because currently you can literally go to jail for that. His other guy, like the respondent, right, the dude who spoke with him on WhatsApp, recorded the call and reported this poor dude to the Russian police. How do you like that? And basically, that dude now has to pay $400 for a horrible, horrible crime, for basically saying what he thinks. That's absolutely, how can you say what you think, especially on WhatsApp, on private call, right? Like that's insane. That's freaking. He should be executed, in my personal opinion. How can he even think about something, right? He has right to. He think he has freedom of thought or speech, not in Russia. Execute, you know. Yeah, but here, by the way, in this very interesting case, we have another interesting case of so-called reporting, because Russians have a very, very long history of reporting for KGB, FSB, and stuff like that. They keep this beautiful tradition after the collapse of the Soviet Union, because, even though, okay, they had like thousands of KGB officers, but someone in Soviet Union wrote those 40 millions of reports on their neighbors, right? So that is another Russian tradition that, by the way, we gotta be more acquainted with, because it's like very, very Russian, just in case. So what else do we have? We have some spectacular firework in Belgorod, and in Belgorod, by the way, they don't have electricity. Oh my god, I lost everything. They don't have electricity since several days already. And all this stuff looks like... Where the hell was that? Oh my god, I had it somewhere, I swear. Belgorod, come on, show this. Crap, it disappeared. So basically, they have problems with electricity. That all of a sudden, everything was so good in Belgorod, everything was fine. They had electricity, they had stuff, and now it's gone. Besides that, this time not Ust-Pizduysk, Ust-Labinsk, you've seen yourself, this stuff is absolutely, absolutely beautiful and spectacular. Like, imagine a guy living in that very building. I don't know what to say. That's amazing. This guy is very unlucky, because he decided to become a member of parliament, and he's a scientist, all right? So the dude is actually like PhD professor, scientist, and he decided to become a politician. And basically, the Russians arrested him because no, he's not an oligarch. He doesn't have money, and he most probably doesn't support like Russian war and stuff like that. And that is why, first of all, they arrested him and said that he cursed on public, which is a horrible, horrible crime, worth going to the jail. And they sent him to jail to like other oblast or something like that. And currently he has hard time actually continuing his political campaign. I don't know how to comment this, but I know how to comment this. This is literally Russian, oh my God, Russian supermarket in Crimea. And you can see that sanctions don't work because they're international, but Ukrainian sanctions actually do. So Crimeans are having hard time with stuff in their supermarkets nowadays. And again, guys, there's like a lot of, for example, Russian YouTubers who decide to make a video from a Russian supermarket to show that we don't care about your sanctions, they don't work. We have everything. We have kasha, we have sushki, we have vodka. Like, look at our supermarkets, like Tucker Carlson, basically, right? And of course, they don't mention that their freaking food is not sanctioned. Their oil is, their parts for missiles are sanctioned. Everything else, food, like all that stuff, no, that is not sanctioned because it was never even meant to be sanctioned. But this stuff is disappearing still because of Ukrainian long-range sanctions. The Crimeans decided to buy everything. They're running out of fuel. They can't drive their cars anymore. And that is why they decided to buy everything in the stores. And that's the result. They're nagging very, very much about this. Heroes of Russia, here for you, my dear friends. You can see this absolutely, absolutely beautiful, amazing Russian invader on your picture. This is Ivan Myrsanov from Yakutia. So, his story. He was very, very violent towards his wife. And at some point, his violence turned into homicide. So he went to jail while working as a cop. He was a cop, all right? That very good. So he murdered his wife. He went to jail. Of course, from jail, he went straight to war. While he was at the war, his kids lived with some of his relatives, and now he returned from the war and he demands those kids to be returned to him, and most probably he will receive them back because that is literally Russia. And I think that it's a good opportunity to finish today's report with something absolutely cool, because in Kyiv subway, Jesus Christ himself was seen walking up the escalator up. Like, I'm not sure if he wanted to go like somewhere higher or just to the surface. I have no idea, but that's Jesus Christ himself, my friends. There's like a bunch of conspiracy theories in the United States, for example, like Candace Owens or whatever. She enjoys conspiracies. You can tell her that Jesus Christ lives in Kyiv. Right. So that's basically it, my dear friends. We spent 2 amazing hours together. And what more I can say? Thank you so much for watching. Let me know, what are you sure that's not Trump? I'm pretty much sure, because, you know, when Trump walks to the escalators, they usually stop, as far as I remember. So I believe it wasn't Trump. His hair was like a bit darker. He looked a bit leaner and more alive, all right? Like, he had this aura, all right? With this, my dear friends, thank you so much for watching. I will be releasing you because it's literally 9th of my God, I had this like hallucination that is 9th of July, which when I have a birthday. Anyways, that's too early yet. I'll see you next time. Don't forget to rate your fridge, because we all earned this. If you have any questions regarding the presentation, please let me know in the commentaries. Much hugs to you all, my dear friends. Much love to everybody. You know that you are the motivation and the biggest reason why I have this channel on the first place. And I am grateful to everyone, those who support my channel, those who watch my channel, those who support Ukraine. Thank you so much. And as always, be safe. Bye-bye.